It was December 26, 2004. Frederick Bornsand and his girlfriend Sarah were on vacation in Phuket, a popular tourist destination known for its beautiful beaches. Just the day before, they had celebrated Christmas in paradise. But soon, their peaceful stay would come to a sudden and terrifying end. Because around 8 o'clock in the morning, people began to notice something strange. It almost felt like the ground was shaking. But because of how subtle it was, people just brushed it off and went about their day. However, shortly afterwards, an even stranger sight began to unfold. The ocean suddenly seemed to drain away, leaving the beaches bigger and barren. The sight was surreal, drawing in curious onlookers who wanted to explore the exposed beach. But it wouldn't stay this way for long. Meanwhile, Frederick and Sarah were swimming in their resort's pool, close to the narrow-seated shore. This is when things started to go wrong. Frederick noticed people running away from the beach. One man in particular shouted at them, saying, "Get up from the pool, get away." It all happened so fast. Frederick initially thought it might be a terrorist attack, but after quickly returning to their hotel room, he realized what was really happening. The water had returned with a violent force, and the resort had been flooded. You see, the tremors felt earlier were actually the distant echoes of a massive 9.1 magnitude earthquake in the Indian Ocean, one of the strongest ever recorded. And this earthquake had triggered a tsunami. The water came back in a sort of flood, covering the pool and reaching the first floor of the hotel. It was unsettling, but after only a few minutes, the water receded again. As a result, many ventured back outside. Frederick, still concerned, went downstairs to check the situation and help with the cleanup. But what he didn't realize was that this was only the first wave. In a cruel twist of fate, the initial flooding had given people a false sense of security, unknowingly drawing them into the path of the next catastrophic wave. While outside, Frederick met an elderly couple, Malcolm and Jane Boyd, on the floor beneath him, a dangerously low position. Frederick spoke to them from above, urging them to get to higher ground, but it was already too late. The second wave struck with a brutal force. Within moments, violent currents flooded the area and surrounded the couple. Frederick, just 7 feet away, reached out, but he wasn't close enough. He could only watch as the couple were swept away. Soon, the waves engulfed the entire resort, tearing the building apart. As the water rose around him, Frederick realized that now he was in grave danger too. In an attempt to escape, he went back inside at the hotel lobby. But the lobby flooded rapidly. Soon, the water was just a foot from the ceiling. Even inside, the current was overpowering, and Frederick was dragged into the water. There was nothing he could do to stop the waves from tearing him from the building and stranding him in the middle of the raging tsunami. This was the end. Frederick was in the midst of the deadliest tsunami in recorded history. A catastrophic series of waves that ravaged coastlines all across the Indian Ocean. But then, through the chaos, he saw something. The top of a tree. Frederick managed to grab a hold of its branches and clung onto them as the waves destroyed everything around him. Frederick clung to that tree through the entirety of the tsunami, waiting for the water to finally recede. And eventually it did. Miraculously, he survived the catastrophe. His girlfriend Sarah also made it through. But not everyone was so fortunate. In the aftermath, Frederick set out to find the elderly couple who had been swept away. He found Malcolm, barely conscious, and with the help of 2 others, pulled him from the receding waters. Malcolm survived, but tragically, Jane, his wife, did not. Jane was among the 227,000 lives that were claimed by the Indian Ocean tsunami. 14 countries were hit, with Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, and Thailand being the most affected. Over 5 million people were injured or in need of care, with almost 2 million being left homeless. Entire communities and cities were wiped out, forcing survivors to rebuild their homes and their lives while grieving the loss of loved ones. Banda Aceh was hit the hardest. Here, according to the NOAA, waves reached heights of up to 167 feet, and the water surged miles inland. 61,000 people, 20% of the city's population. In response, countries around the world gave $13.5 billion in aid to the devastated coastlines. But despite these massive recovery efforts, some losses, like the lives taken, can never be replaced.
Oh, that's f***ing big.
Get away! Get away! Oh my god, that's...
Oj, helvete. 5 minuter.
James, this is the Arlington Police Department.
James, this is the Arlington Police Department. We need you to move
Away.
away from your front door. James, stay away from your front door. Stay away from your front door, James.
James Yu was a man overwhelmed by paranoia, convinced there was a plot to assassinate him. He believed everyone around him was part of a grand conspiracy. You see, over the years, James went through some hard times, which seemed to fuel his suspicions of those close to him. The death of his mother in 1992, losing his job in 2003, and his problems with alcohol, which worsened as a result. But the turning point came in 2015, when James was involuntarily admitted to a hospital during alcohol withdrawal. His wife and sister had pushed for his admission to the hospital against his will, leaving him feeling deeply betrayed. As the man's suspicions grew, so did the strain on his marriage, leading it to a bitter divorce in 2017. These struggles fanned the flames of his mistrust, leaving James convinced he was being targeted. In the years that followed, across various social media platforms like YouTube, James began making some rather disturbing accusations. James became convinced his neighbors, a family of 4 who shared a duplex with him, were undercover agents. He believed one of them was actually a former co-worker in disguise from his previous job as head of security for a telecom company, where he was fired. He thought they were spying on him, trying to make sure he didn't leak confidential information. But his accusations didn't end there. Most bizarrely, he also believed his sister and ex-wife were a witch and an alien. In James's mind, no one was who they said they were. He claimed they're all part of a plot to assassinate him on December 7th, 2023, and that they planned to make it look like he had taken his own life. In the days leading up to December 7th, James's behavior became increasingly odd. He covered his windows with black garbage bags and wrapped toilet paper around the trees in his yard. Then, on December 4th, James's unsettling behavior came to a head. He tossed garbage all over his front yard and threw clothes out his window. Little did anyone know what was about to unfold. Hours later, he began firing flares outside for no apparent reason.
Arlington County Police! Stop shooting the flares!
Eventually, the police arrived at James's house, ordering him to stop, concerned he might harm someone.
Mr. Yu, can you hear me? Mr. Yu!
But despite their command, he continued firing. Fearing the situation could escalate, his neighbors were evacuated, and more officers arrived with the search warrant.
James, Arlington Police, come to the front door with your hands up. Do it now. We have your building surrounded. You're not leaving. Come to the door now with your hands up and surrender.
But James refused to let them in, and so, with him being uncooperative and his front door locked, the police decided to breach the entrance.
James, this is the Arlington Police Department. We need you to move away from your front door. James, stay away from your front door. Stay away from your front door, James. Stay away from the front door, James. The Arlington Police Department.
Gunshots echoed from inside the home. This marked a serious escalation, and James was now seen as a significant threat. To hopefully force him out and surrender before anyone would get hurt, pepper spray and tear gas were deployed into the home. But James still refused to emerge. Next, officers prepared to break through his front window, which was blacked out with garbage bags. But before they could shatter the glass, something else did.
details tonight in a deadly home explosion in Arlington, Virginia.
Police say they found 2 shotguns, a handgun, and 2 flare guns in the rubble of the house.
A closer look of what's left following that explosion. I want to show you what's right there, just rubble.
When the flames were extinguished and the thick smoke finally cleared, investigators searched the rubble of the duplex, where they found the cause of the explosion. Up to 35 gallons of gasoline stored in James's basement. Within the wreckage, they also found James Yu, dead at 56.
After a thorough and comprehensive investigation was conducted, our investigators determined the incident was an intentional act by the decedent and has been classified as incendiary.
The ATF concluded that James intentionally ignited the explosion. While his exact motivations are unclear, it's speculated that he deliberately lured officers to the scene and then triggered the blast to cause maximum harm. He may have also been targeting the neighbors he believed were spies. But if this was James's sinister plan, he failed. While some people did sustain minor injuries, no one was seriously hurt or killed. He was the only casualty. Although the explosion did succeed in wreaking havoc, at least 10 nearby homes were damaged, and his neighbors in the duplex, the family of 4 he believed were spies, lost everything when their home was destroyed. Fortunately, a GoFundMe campaign raised nearly $250,000 to help them recover. Following the incident, all of James's social media accounts were quickly suspended. Yet, surprisingly, a new YouTube channel appeared shortly afterward, with the user claiming to be James and insisting he was still alive, stating he wasn't even home during the explosion.
An account with a similar handle, but its only 2 videos were posted Tuesday morning, several hours after the explosion.
Though likely just a fake account, it did leave behind even more questions. Many have speculated about James's disturbing story, but much of it, like his motivations for targeting the police, remains a mystery. One thing, however, is clear. James Yu was a deeply troubled man, consumed by paranoid beliefs that ultimately led to his demise.
Hands up in the air! You do that again, we're s***ing you, do you understand? And listen to my instructions! Don't talk, listen!
On January 18th, 2016, Daniel Shaver was staying at the La Quinta Hotel in Mesa, Arizona. He was on a business trip as part of his work in pest control. That evening, Daniel was in his room sharing drinks with 2 acquaintances he'd recently met in the hotel. It was an ordinary night, but one that would soon take a devastating turn. You see, at some point, one of them noticed a strange case in the corner of the room. Inside was a pellet gun that Daniel used for his job, and he decided to show it to them. But in doing so, Daniel made a critical mistake. He pointed the gun out the window, unaware that his actions would soon set off a tragic chain of events. Because to the guests on the ground outside, the gun looked real. As a result, 911 was called.
911 emergency.
Hi, I'm with the La Quinta and a couple of the guests have come to me. I'm an employee here. They come to me and they told me that somebody's pointing a rifle outside of one of the windows in our building.
In response, 6 officers arrived outside Daniel's room, believing they were confronting an armed man. Yet Daniel, now intoxicated, was unarmed and likely unaware of why the officers were there.
Occupants of room 502. This is the Mesa Police. Listen to my instructions, or it's going to become very uncomfortable for you. Stop right there! Stop! Stop! Get on the ground, both of you! Lay down on the ground! Lay down on the ground! Who else is in the room? Nobody. Nobody else is in the room? Nobody. Are you positive? Nobody. Absolutely positive. Okay.
Since apparently we have a failure for you to comprehend simple instructions, I'm going to go over some of them again, okay? Can you both hear and understand me?
Yes.
All right. If you make a mistake, another mistake, there's a very severe possibility you're both going to get. Do you understand that?
Yes.
I do.
Yes.
All right.
What the?
This is, shut up. I'm not here to be tactful or diplomatic with you. You listen, you obey. For one thing, did I tell you to move, young man? Did I tell you to put both your hands on the top of your head and interlace your fingers? Take your feet and cross your left foot over your right foot. Who else is in the room?
Nobody.
If you move, we're going to consider that a threat, and we are going to deal with it, and you may not survive it. Do you understand me?
Yes, sir.
Young lady, shut up and listen.
The officer then instructed Monique Portillo to crawl toward him, and she did so without any problems. But Daniel's encounter ended differently.
Okay, young man, listen to my instructions and do not make a mistake. You are to keep your legs crossed. Do you understand me? You are to put both of your hands palms down, straight out in front of you. Push yourself up to a kneeling position. I said keep your legs crossed!
Sorry.
I didn't say this in conversation. Put your hair! Hands up in the air! You do that again, we're you. Do you understand? Then listen to my instructions.
I'm trying to do what you
Don't talk, listen! Hands straight up in the air. Do not put your hands down for any reason. You think you're gonna fall, you better fall on your face. Your hands go back into the small of your back or down. We are going to shoot you. Do you understand me?
Yes, sir.
Crawl towards me. Crawl towards me!
Yes, sir.
26-year-old Daniel Shaver was shot 5 times, dying almost instantly. Drunk, scared and confused, Daniel faced 6 armed officers, all pointing their guns at him. He was given complicated instructions and was told he would be killed if he failed to comply, commands that were shouted aggressively by an officer who further escalated an already tense situation. Meanwhile, Daniel, who again was heavily intoxicated, luckily didn't even fully grasp what was happening. Under the immense stress, it's no surprise he struggled to follow their commands. Their final order was that Dan crawl toward them on his hands and knees, but as he tried to do so, his shorts began to slip and fall down. Without thinking twice, Daniel instinctively reached for his waistband to pull them up, a movement tragically misinterpreted by one of the officers as a threatening action. Daniel was shot and killed by Officer Philip Brailsford, who claimed he believed the man was reaching for a weapon.
What was going through my mind when that happened was that he was performing a weapons check.
But upon further investigation, officers found no firearms on Daniel, only 2 pellet guns in his room. Brailsford was let go from the Mesa Police Department and was charged with second-degree murder and reckless manslaughter. Although these charges didn't hold, he was ultimately acquitted and found not guilty. After his acquittal, Brailsford challenged his firing and also claimed the whole incident had left him with PTSD. Following this, he was able to negotiate a deal to be temporarily rehired by the Mesa Police Department, which allowed him to then retire with a lifelong disability pension in 2019. Sergeant Charles Langley, the officer heard shouting commands in the video, also retired shortly after the shooting and moved to the Philippines.
I looked at him and I just thought, gun. I remember that at that point I thought that we were going to get, I thought I was going to get shot. I thought, I was yelling at him.
Meanwhile, Dan's family was left to pick up the pieces. Daniel left behind a grieving wife and 2 young children. His family would later sue the city, with his wife and parents settling for $8 million and $1.5 million respectively. But no amount of money could ever make up for the injustice of Daniel's death, or the cruelty so clearly displayed in Brailsford's body camera footage. one of the darkest videos in human history.
If you knew it was me, would you have listened?
It was April 22nd, 2008, the day Stephen Miller was going to film his promotional video. You see, Stephen was a stuntman and exotic animal trainer. And for this promo video, he was about to wrestle a bear. This bear was Rocky, a 700-pound grizzly, a bear his cousin, Randy Miller, had raised. Randy ran a facility called Predators in Action, which housed Rocky, alongside various other creatures he had trained. This is Randy filling in for Will Ferrell's character in the movie Semi-Pro, wrestling Rocky, who's playing Dewey at the Killer Bear. Only weeks after this movie had been released, Stephen was about to wrestle the bear too. Stephen spent the morning bonding with Rocky in preparation for their scene together. By this point, there weren't any problems. So before long, the crew set up their cameras and Stephen and Rocky took their positions. The plan was simple. Begin with a few shots of the pair standing side by side, then start the face-off. Of course, this wasn't a real wrestling match. Stephen wasn't actually meant to be attacked by the bear, but it was supposed to look that way. Nonetheless, with everything set, the cameras began to roll. Now, at first, everything seemed to be going according to plan. It was taking a while to shoot, but this was expected, given how restless these animals naturally are. And Rocky specifically was very playful, which also made him somewhat unpredictable. A characteristic that was about to become a major problem. Stephen was pulled to the ground. Within an instant, the staged attack became a real one. Panicked, Randy rushed in with a cane, frantically swinging it at Rocky, desperate to free his cousin. But each hit only seemed to make Rocky more aggressive, who began Stephen. Randy then tried to physically pry open the bear's jaws, but it was no use. He was immediately tossed away. Rocky was out of control. As the situation escalated, two trainers ran in with pepper spray, unleashing it on the bear. Thankfully, this actually worked. Stunned by the harsh spray, finally, Rocky let go of Stephen and ended his attack. Stephen managed to get to his feet and stumble away, but it was clear the damage was already done. His neck was badly. The bleeding wouldn't stop, and he couldn't breathe. Quickly, he collapsed and lost consciousness.
He's heavily from his neck. Okay. We're trying to get him into the car. We need someone here immediately. Still has not regained consciousness.
Okay, as long as he's breathing.
He's not breathing anymore.
He's not breathing anymore?
No.
Okay.
The crew called 911 and tried to administer first aid, but it was already too late. Rocky's powerful jaws had Stephen's jugular vein and carotid artery. Within just minutes, Stephen was gone. Stephen is remembered as a dedicated family man. His tragic death left his wife a widow and his children without their father.
Every day we talked. He called me every night to check on me, to see how I was doing, because he knew I lived real remote, up on top of this mountain with these animals.
As with many animal attacks, some argued that Rocky should be euthanized. But Randy defended the bear, insisting it was never Rocky's intent to kill. It was simply a tragic accident.
I don't think he tried to kill him. So I don't blame him for that.
Ultimately, authorities decided to spare Rocky's life, though under strict conditions. He was banned from working in films or television and was to be kept isolated, with only trainers allowed near him. Despite what happened, Randy continued to fight for Rocky's rights, believing that's what Steven would have wanted.
This is News 7 at 5.
Really encouraging drivers to be careful as they're heading down the mountain.
Okay, not sure what happened there. We will, of course, let you know as soon as we find out.
And what happened next is nothing short of horrific.
No one really knew the real Vesta Flanagan.
A North Carolina soldier has been killed in Iraq.
At the WDBJ news station, he worked under the name Bryce Williams. On camera, he appeared confident and professional, a seasoned reporter who had even worked as a news anchor.
Well, taiko is a Japanese word that means drum, and a group called the Taiko Project.
Yeah, pretty good. Nicely done.
Type of an argument.
But beneath the surface, he was spiraling out of control, and it didn't take long for the cracks to show. Within only months of being hired, he became known for his short temper, and his relationships with co-workers began to deteriorate. As he grew increasingly volatile and angry, arguments became more frequent, and soon, complaints about him started piling up at the station. His colleagues felt threatened, uncomfortable, unsure of what might set him off next. With tensions at an all-time high, and his work quality declining as well, management decided to let him go. Flanagan was fired in February 2013, less than a year after being hired. But Flanagan did not go quietly. When asked to leave, he protested and threw a fit, forcing the station to call the police. But even when officers arrived, Flanagan still refused to leave his chair. They had to physically pull him out of his seat and escort him from the building.
Okay, are you finished?
On his way out, Adam Ward, a cameraman who had prior issues with Flanagan, filmed the incident.
Okay, and you need to lose some weight, so.
This enraged Flanagan even more, and he began insulting Adam before flipping him off. Flanagan then threw a wooden cross at the news director, saying, "You'll need this," before finally being removed from the station. This was the breaking point. After this contentious firing, Flanagan snapped. In a fit of anger, he grabbed his 2 pet cats and killed them with his bare hands. But this was only the beginning. Flanagan believed he'd been treated unfairly and filed a complaint with the EEOC. He accused colleagues like Allison Parker of making racist and homophobic remarks towards him as a gay black man. But the comments he pointed to were open to interpretation, not clear insults. And since these claims couldn't be corroborated, they were ultimately dismissed. Frustrated by this outcome and convinced he was the victim of injustice, Flanagan decided he would take matters into his own hands. On the morning of August 26, 2015, reporter Allison Parker and cameraman Adam Ward were filming a segment on live television. Allison was interviewing Vicky Gardner about an upcoming event. It seemed like an ordinary morning, but just outside the frame, something sinister was approaching. It was Vesta Flanagan, and surprisingly, no one seemed to notice. Vesta was carrying a phone filming the encounter, while also carrying something else.
Okay, not sure what happened there. We will, of course, let you know as soon as we find out what those sounds were from.
Sergeant Elmer Krause of Greensboro died in an ambush near Baghdad earlier this month. His body was found this week. His girlfriend got the life-changing...
Flanagan opened fire on all 3 of them. With 911 calls pouring in, Flanagan fled the scene, leaving them to bleed out. By this point, Flanagan was now driving a rented vehicle, trying to hide his identity while he was on the run. However, it didn't take long to track him down. At 11:20 a.m., officers spotted his car. But when they attempted to pull him over, Flanagan ignored them and sped away, sparking a police chase. Although it didn't last long.
Police say the suspect in the Roanoke TV, 41-year-old Vester Lee Flanagan, was spotted driving a Chevy Sonic.
Less than 2 miles into this pursuit, Flanagan drove off the road and crashed his car. Surrounded by officers, he was caught. This was just too much for Flanagan. When the police approached his car, they found him with a self-inflicted. He was flown to hospital, but by 1:26 p.m., Vester Flanagan was pronounced dead. Inside Flanagan's car, police found a wig, a to-do list, 3 license plates, 6 magazines of ammunition, and 17 stamped letters. Adam's fiancée, Melissa Ott, who also worked at WDBJ, was celebrating her last day at the station before starting a new job. Adam had planned to join her soon after. Melissa watched in horror as the shooting unfolded live on air, not knowing if Adam had even survived. But tragically, both Adam and Allison lost their lives. Vicky was the sole survivor, though she had to endure a series of grueling surgeries and treatments, losing a kidney and part of her colon in the process.
And when he opened fire, it was still very difficult to even understand, to comprehend what was happening.
Hey everyone, I'm Allison Parker. Photojournalist Adam Ward and I are putting the final touches on our special report. Neglect is a form of child.
Adam and Allison are remembered for their kindness and vibrant personalities, and their deaths deeply affected everyone around them. Flanagan, on the other hand, is remembered only as the monster who took their lives away.